Welcome to the Call to Action podcast, where we bring you incredible people and even more incredible stories with discussions and topics about what it takes to sacrifice everything to overcome hardships and failures to achieve success. Our guests heard the call. Now it's your turn.
So I felt like I felt like I was the person to tell this story. That I knew Ken Wilber's work on a deep level, and that I was able to articulate the story in a way that I felt I was called to do it. That it was my duty, and that it was worth dying for. That it was much more important than me. That I could carry this torch.
Our next guest is a British-American director, actor, author, and dexterous artist of many talents. You may have seen his roles on ABC's Quantico, Hawaii Five-0, The Haves and Have-Nots, CSI Miami, and Family Guy, just to name a few. In addition, he is an outstanding athlete, appearing in over 100 magazine covers, ranging from Men's Fitness, Iron Man, and Fitness RX. His pecs of steel and washboard abs have been plastered all over Times Square. He is also an author and wrote The Consciousness Revolution, Meditations for a New World, and is available currently on Amazon in German and soon to be in English. This man is also trailblazing the world of conscious meditation, where he guides live lucid dreaming meditation sessions in beautiful locations all over Los Angeles. Finally, he is currently preparing for a much-anticipated release of his latest feature film that he wrote, produced, and directed called Grayson Grits, based on Ken Wilber's acclaimed book. Buddhist monks seek meditation advice from him, he wrestles sharks for fun, and the cast of the 300 movie aspired to look like this man's Greek god of a body. He is one of the most diverse men you'll ever get to know, and my dear friend, please welcome our next guest to the show, Sebastian Siegel.
It's such a pleasure to be here. I love what you guys are doing.
Bro, it is so good to have you on here finally, my man. So before we jump into today's topics and discussions, we got you here for a little bit short time today, but we'll definitely be getting you on for round 2, maybe even 3. We put our guests through a thing we call the brain freeze frenzy. It's a wild array of random questions fired off rapid style. Are you ready?
Ready.
What's one positive thing you can say about yourself today?
Resilient.
Okay, tell us about your morning routine.
I drink a lot of water first thing in the morning, every day, no matter what. Then I'll usually do something alkaline, like apple cider vinegar. I always make the bed as soon as I leave the room. Depending on where I am in the world, if I'm in Hawaii, I like to do some sort of meditative practice outside before the sun comes up. And then in California, where I'm based, it depends on what I'm working on. Usually it maps around that. But I like to do something creative first thing in the morning. Sometimes that'll kick in even before I wake up. If thoughts are in my mind about something, I'll get out and just sort of free write them out. If I'm in a relationship, if I'm with someone, I love to talk about dreams, share them, listen to them, interpret them. Then I go to the fridge, I get a Colt 45. With a wild turkey floater and a 151 chaser, and then that gets the day good. Then after that,
hell yeah! Cheers to that.
Moving on, is there a movie that came out where you thought that definitely did the book justice?
Oh! In terms of book adaptations, wow, that's a great one, man. I don't know in terms of stories, I don't know if, so many different books have been written about it, but I remember as a boy, I must have been 8, 9 years old or something when it came out, but JFK blew me away. The Oliver Stone film, I just thought it without taking a clear stance in terms of what happened or what didn't happen, I think that he offered up the possibilities of numerous ways and I think pertinent to the world today, that corruption happens not always it's not always intended and then carried through when something corrupt happens in business or government, but it's from confluence and complicity. So when instability and opportunity meet confluence and complicity, you have corruption, which is, I think, inevitable in this circumstance, in this world that we're looking at right now. But JFK blew me away as a storyteller. I was captivated by who these individuals were and what was going on in the world, and how people related to that thing personally in terms of how it was affecting their life, but also mythically, that it was so much bigger than what they were, that they thought, what's really going on in the world? What's happening here with me now and this president in our world, JFK being at that time, but also what's happening in the world in general, this way that it sparked an interest in existential questions.
How many books do you read annually?
That's a great question. I used to be a voracious reader. As a kid, I did not like reading. I couldn't stand it. And then as I started getting into reading as a teen, and then I became a voracious reader in my 20s. And it was I leaned towards psychology and philosophy and mostly kind of scholarly type of books. Now I don't force, I don't drive through too aggressively like, with Count. I don't do books on Audible so much. I know a lot of people have life hacks, like to fast forward them and such. And, I think we venture into that, but I think there's something interesting going on right now where I feel like the age of data collection is over. We're looking at a period where in 5 or 10 years from now, we're all automatically going to have access to all the information in the world as it happens, that Google will be, or whatever downloads will be rightly available. So I try to lean in the opposite direction, and I try to read not so much material, but really read it to own it, to really embody it. The books that I have here, a lot of my favorite ones, they're just from top to bottom in notes. And I found that there was experiences early on, especially with psychology, where I would read a book and it just rocked me, and it affected my worldview so much. And then I would talk to someone else, and I'd be like, I read this amazing book, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I read that 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I'd be like, that person didn't understand that book.
Yeah.
I'm sorry not to answer it though, but I'm always reading. I've got a book in the car, a book by the bed, a book in the living room. I always carry a book with me, and I do like hard copy. I don't read digital stuff usually.
Likewise, always love that tactile sense of picking up a book, even the smell of it. What one thing, if you had to pick one now, do you miss most during this pandemic, and what are you loving about it?
That's such a great question. Thank you. I love what you guys are doing here. I miss the way that people walk around and enjoy the company of one another without fear.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people are being even closer and being even warmer, but for the most part, people feel afraid. And the weight of that across society is awful. I'm a reclusive individual, but I'm outgoing, and I really love people. I love dogs. I love animals. I love this world, and I want to connect. The history of being alive and the history of this cosmos is all about connection and interconnectivity. So when I go outside, whether I'm talking to a waiter or valet or a partner or a company, I'm always getting eye contact and engaging. And I think the thing I miss the most by far is that people really feel, some people, afraid. And I understand that fear. I understand it. A lot of it is not justified, but I still understand it nevertheless. And it's an awful thing for them, for their health, but it's also awful for everyone they come into contact with,
Yeah.
For me, I feel like I don't need to wait for Friday or Hanukkah or Christmas to have fun. I can be like, hey man, it's Monday morning, what's happening? And I think other people need, what the nice thing about Christmas is, whether we celebrate it or not, it puts this nice tone in the air in America where people are like, hey, it's Hanukkah, it's Christmas, it's, whatever the thing is. And there's no need to wait for that. But there's also no need to ever back off from that, including in a pandemic, especially in a pandemic. And then if I could put one more button on that, it would be, I know so many people love that movie, Life is Beautiful.
Oh gosh, yeah, you're going back.
Right, the Roberto Benigni movie where he's in concentration camp with his son, and people say they love it, and it's just like when someone says, I read this book and it affected me, and you think, that person didn't understand that book. They loved this Roberto Benigni movie, Life is Beautiful. What they're saying is, no matter how horrible the situation is, we need to connect. We need to connect and have fun and connect and find joy and laughter. And I think that's more important than ever. So that's the thing I miss the most. The thing that I'm liking about it, I like the challenge that it's bringing about. Obviously, I like what's going on in nature. To hear the birds louder than I've ever heard them before in California is a wonderful thing. It sounds almost like I remember, when I lived in Hawaii, the sound of the birds there it's starting to sound like that. To see the clear sky and air is really wonderful. On a deeper level, one of the things that I like about it is I like the challenge. Right? I like the terrain that it's requiring me to navigate within my own self in order to, find a sort of mechanism of meaning within my own kind of solitude. I live alone, so I like that challenge, I suppose.
Love it. If you could go back in time and get drunk or high with anyone in history, who would it be and why?
Oh. Oh man, I go back 10 minutes ago and get drunk and high with you guys.
Yes! Best answer.
That's the winner, dude. Winner.
You heard it here on CTAP, guys and girls.
Oh man, kick it off, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, Carl Jung is such an amazing, Freud is so amazing. And then on the darker side, just these radical minds, Stalin, so horrible in so many ways, but in that time was a leader for his country that's receiving a lot of kind of pop iconography that system appreciates that kind of strong leader. He slaughtered millions of his people. I'm not saying that he's a good person, but in terms of saying getting drunk and high with someone is a hypothetical. And I think getting drunk and high with him would be, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
that's a really,
get that insight,
really great perspective.
sort of sensibility of his worldview.
Interesting.
Next, your favorite place that you've traveled?
I spent a lot of time in Hawaii, and I did some growing up there, and I've seen so many things that have rocked my world. And whether it's swimming with dolphins or swimming with sharks or standing on the edge of a razor cliff with 1,000-foot drop on either side, or just walking down the street and seeing a stranger and just saying hi, and then the person's like this sort of recognition of this life and this existence in all of us. I love Hawaii. It's really a special place on a lot of levels. The smell of flowers and wind.
Any particular islands? It sounds like you lived on one.
I did. I lived for a while on Oahu. My father still lives there. And all the islands, I care for them very deeply and have a personal experience on all of them. And they're all very different. The further north you go, the more lush, like Kauai. And the further south, the Big Island is the youngest Earth. It's about 1 million years old. Kauai is about 5 million years old. So that explains the differential in why Kauai is more lush and why the Big Island is more is drier for the most part. But they're all just amazing.
Most amount of lines you've had to memorize for a scene in a show or a movie?
Oh, man. I was in high school, and I did this show called Death Trap. And it's basically, and it was made into a movie with Christopher, oh, my God. It was made into a movie with Christopher Reeves, and I can't think of, he's blanking on the brilliant actor. Anyways, it's basically these two guys for most of the movie, and basically the whole thing is in one room. And it's just, I don't know how much. It's a ton. And it was a tough one. Yeah, it was a tough one. But it was great. It was a great lesson. And then I think working on the Haves and Have-Nots Tyler Perry show, which I did 2 seasons of. Season 8 is where I start, and it'll be out, I think, in the coming weeks. And he shoots so fast, faster than anyone in history. And so you'll get pages the day before. You can get 10 or 20 pages even a day before. And it's huge pressure for everyone. Yeah, and but it necessitates really stepping up and beyond the comfort zone, and the pressure's high, but it's a wonderful challenge, and I'm deeply grateful for that challenge for sure.
To go off of a little tangent on that before Keith gets on to the last, we got a last 3, and then we'll jump into some other things. But an athlete, you're an athlete yourself, as Keith and I both are as well. And what do you have to do you have a routine that you get into when you prepare for these scenes? I mean, is there a flow, a mental state of flow that you get into, or a way that you get there to prepare for something like that so grueling?
I was just reading for something for NCIS the other day. It was a heavy piece, and it was a guy's in prison, and he's just told in the scene that his father's died, and he hasn't seen his daughter in 15 years or something like this. And I just drop into it. It's just right there that I'm laughing and having fun before and right after. Like it's instance right after that. It's right there. So I think that the prep happens before, right? That the it's always right below the surface. You know, kind of with a meditative practice, right? Where I used to have a super disciplined practice where I'd wake up in the morning and meditate. I went through periods sometimes where I was doing 2-3 hours, 4 hours, even in a day for many years. And then after a while, it just becomes there's more access to these deeper states, right? And just like an athlete might need a certain amount of warm up for something, the dexterity to be able to walk on your hands or, do, any number of different things, diving deep down in the ocean or something is right there available. So I think, I drop in depending on what the thing is in different ways, but electricity and energy always drives it. You got to find that space inside the cells and just feel that, right?
I just felt you do that.
Yeah. The easiest way is to always be dropping in and out of it anyways, right? Like the same thing, I think, where we started off. Why wait till Christmas or Hanukkah, right?
That's right.
Have it right there anyways, yeah.
And we're getting energized through this, even through the corona and the remoteness of for example, CTAP today. The energy is still alive and we're feeling it. If you could press a pause button, Sebastian, on any of your life's responsibilities for a whole year, what would you spend that time doing and why? This could be bills, relationships.
You mean what would I spend the time doing that go towards those responsibilities? Instead of,
exactly.
Yeah, got it. I definitely any of the financial means, any of the responsibilities toward finance.
Yeah, right.
I don't like paperwork, and I don't like any of it. I don't like it. And I choose that because the time that goes into that, I would rather spend reading or connecting or learning or challenging myself in a different way that activates more of my body on a cellular level, more of my mind to reach out and expand. I never was interested in amassing wealth and just collecting money and investing. I've never invested in the stock market. I've been very, very fortunate as a storyteller, as a filmmaker. I've owned wonderful homes. I feel very fortunate to live in the home that I live in. But I don't seek, my mission in life is not to amass wealth. It's to use money only as a mechanism, as feet to do more things, right? So if I didn't have to, if I was doing less of the concern around that, I think I'd be more liberated to just push into really the expression of it. The expression of the art or the work or the thing that I'm creating and doing.
Beautiful. Last two. Yeah, man. Yeah,
game show. Come on.
You win. You won the grand prize.
This is actually a reality show, and we're going to do that with you.
Let's flip the script real quickly. Yeah, between two firms.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Just wait till we hit 11.
Yeah, exactly. Last two here. If you could call yourself 10 years ago, what advice would you give yourself? And then secondly, call yourself 10 years in the future, what would you want to ask yourself?
10 years ago, it's always such a good one to say that, like, there's no need to worry. Like, it's going to be amazing. The things that you think now are impossible, you're going to be doing them beyond what you can even, in a way that you're going to be so, if you could take a glimpse, you'd be blown away.
Amen.
Right? And anyone to hear that also, for anyone to hear that is like, it's so, and I feel like that, if I could come back now, 10 years and say to myself now, that's so helpful too. So I try to embody that every day. But of course, as we grow, we take on bigger, things that are larger than us, hopefully. And those, they become intimidating. And sometimes we hold our breath. So I would tell myself that it's going to be gorgeous. It's going to be spectacular. And then the other one was in 10 years from now. What was it?
What would you want to ask yourself 10 years in the future?
Oh gosh, man. Why'd you get so high and drunk 9.5 years ago? I mean, did you have to drive the Phantom off the freeway? Why didn't you
Yes.
call
you
it
did.
over?
Killing me, man. That's fucking the best answer I've heard ever.
Hey, that's why you're here today.
I would say, where did you meet her?
Mm.
I'd like to know that now.
That's beautiful, man.
Tell us, for all the listeners here, who is the most impressive actor that you've worked with?
Oof. Yeah, I like so many. There are so many brilliant actors out there. That's such a tough one because I like them in so many different ways. You know, I mean, this film I just finished that I wrote, produced, and directed, Grayson Grits, both Mina Suvari and Stuart Townsend really just and in terms of your question earlier about memorizing dialogue, you know, most of the script is between them, and it's an enormous amount, but they really went there and they really became these people. When you look at the screen, you don't think these are these actors being these people. Just if they walked into a room, you'd be like, people are going to confuse them for those individuals. Another one of the actors that's and all the actors were exceptional. Frances Fisher has been a longtime friend of mine, and she's in my
big name
documentaries. And we did the Mary Osmond show together, and the talk show about my first documentary. We did it, and then she is in Grayson Grits also. And as a director, like watching her as an actress, just the number of movies she shot, from Titanic to now she's on that. Oh my God, what's it called? I'm not sure. This really popular show out right now. But she's so incredible to see the things that are effortless for her. Like for instance, there was a scene where she had the makeup had put this sort of lipstick on her, and then she kissed Mina, who plays her daughter in the movie, on the forehead, you know, and then it was still on, the lipstick was still there, and she worked it into the scene, you know, but without thinking about it, you know, she just licked her hands and wiped it off Mina's forehead, and it came across as such a tender thing that a mother would do for a daughter. And I thought, wow, it's like this is a master at work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, you know, Tyler Perry's amazing in the way that he's just the most, if not one of the most prolific writer, producer, director, actor in history. He's just done so much stuff. And to see the effortlessness, what looks effortless when he does it is pretty amazing. And he always gets, you know, his audience loves him for that they feel his sort of, the way he's able to do kind of comedy and mass material is pretty impressive. And drama, you know, do both. Gerard Butler's an amazing actor. You know, he's extraordinary on so many levels.
Wow.
Yeah, they're you know, so those are all great. They're all incredible.
Transitioning right into that, you know, one thing I've been really looking forward to, and Keith and I have both watched Grayson Grits trailer, and man, I have to say, and this isn't just because you're my boy and I love you to death, man, you guys absolutely made me feel something special just in the 2-minute 50-second trailer that's there. It is incredibly powerful. Keith and I were both just blown away. That doesn't happen a lot, and we're very excited to see this movie. Has what's been going on, you know, with this pandemic, has that caused any issues with like the release date, or what's the kind of current situation right now with and when can our listeners you know, be expecting to possibly see this beautiful piece that you created?
Thanks so much about the teaser. I think that if people like the teaser, they will like the movie. And it's searchable everywhere, just Grayson Grits movie. It's all over the place.
We'll link it in the show notes as well.
Very excellent. And because of this pandemic and the theaters closing, it's changed a number of different things with movies. Obviously, there's going to be a delay on so many movies being released, and the positive thing as a filmmaker is that the demand for streaming has gone way up. The challenge in a sort of short term is that you have these giant studios that have big, let's say $100, $200 million movies that didn't hit their release dates, and when a studio looks at that as a business, they might look, we're expediting, let's say $1 billion over the course of the next 12 months. And they have these targeted releases. Well, if they miss 2 or 3 or 1 or 2, they have to stack them now, right? And then they have to plan the following year or quarter, et cetera. And that's all been postponed. So you're going to have all these things compressed into a shorter period, right? Movies competing with one another on streaming. Now, people have a lot more eyeballs now. Sorry.
You good?
Sorry about that. I don't know how to. I'm still learning.
You're good, bro.
I can make a movie, but I don't know how to watch one or use a computer. Yeah. It's a true story. I went over when we got the director's cut. I went over to watch it at my producing partner's house, and we had my computer. We were going to watch it on his big screen, and we plugged it all in, and his wife wasn't there to do it for us. So we couldn't figure it out, right? We only had a little bit of time. So we ended up watching the movie on my computer with the audio from his big screen. And we were like, this is 20 big movies,
That's hilarious.
And all these people. So that being said, a lot of these movies, their concern is that these big movies, like these $100, $200 million movies, they're cannibalizing one another's audiences because they're going to be released in such a short period. Now, that being said, this is not obviously a competitor with that. This is a more of an art house, heavy drama. It's a true story adapted from a book. It's largely a female audience. It's a story about transcendent love and selfless love. It's a very romantic movie, but it's a heavy drama. It's a cry your eyes out film. It has a global audience. The book has a global audience, So in terms of that, we will release sooner than later. In other words, we're in the running at the Cannes Film Festival, but we won't wait for that. We're going to, right now we're assertively trying to we're exploring marrying with just the right distributor that will give it the release that it needs, the availability that it needs. The audience is sort of built into this film in a lot of ways, and it's going to find its audience. One of the cool things about this film is that this author, from many of the most influential people in the world, is one of the greatest thinkers in history, right? And people, conservative and liberal presidents and global leaders will say that about Ken Wilber, as will people in sort of consciousness and spirituality, from Anthony Robbins to Deepak Chopra to Marianne Williamson to Jean Houston, etc. As will people in popular culture, from Melissa Etheridge to the Wachowskis who made The Matrix to John Mackey, who sold Whole Foods to Amazon. He flew out and watched the movie with me. He laughed, he cried, he called it brilliant. So I think that there is in other words, i.e., where most movies come out and then they kind of trail off. This movie is going to come out, it'll be received by its core audience, and then it's going to climb with interest in the author and also with the visibility as people become affected by this author. I was deeply impacted by this author's work, and I think that when people read his work, Ken Wilber, that they have that kind of impact, and when they do, they're going to look online for his other books, and they're going to see this film, and it's the most accessible introduction into his work.
And the kind of artistic editing and directing that is visible from this teaser it blew me away.
How did you decide to dedicate years of your life and choose this film to write, direct, and produce? Why this message behind this story? Why is it so important? And maybe be able to tie it in, especially right now in this time.
I've written, produced, and directed a lot of material, and each thing has been pertinent to whatever I was, had some sort of personal aspect for me, right? Even if it's just trying to stretch my skill set as a director. There was a trailer that I did for the Euro Cinema Hawaii, the Hawaii European Film Festival, part of Hawaii Film Festival, which has been 36 years, I think, going. 200 movies over 10 days. It's amazing. It's in Hawaii. It's on Oahu. Every year, it's such a great festival. And I did a trailer for them, and for 90 seconds or 2 minutes, the objective was get people to go see these acclaimed European movies. So marry European movies with Hawaii. So I did this sort of James Bond theme, which was the most accessible European franchise, on the ocean in Hawaii, and made it sort of this.
That's sweet.
And it's comical, right? I wrote, produced, directed it, and am in it. And for under 2 minutes, we shot on a yacht, Zodiac, helicopter, and underwater.
Sweet.
we couldn't do, you couldn't do drones that far out. So we shot from a helicopter. And I read books on it before, and all the books were saying, do not shoot in a helicopter, do not shoot underwater, do not shoot on a boat, for a number of different reasons. And I thought, okay, this is going to stretch me as a director and as a producer, and I want to do all those things, because once I do it, it'll be, and now that and it was hard, but once I did it, now I know I can, I would like to do my favorite franchise is the 007 franchise. And that's for me as a British boy, I've always loved those movies. I've seen them all. It's the films I would most like to direct in terms of that genre. And so I think early on, intuitively, I felt like, writing, producing, and directing something that required this sort of big scope spoke to me. In terms of this film, it chose me, really. I read the authors, 20 of his other books, and they rocked my world. They were just so amazing and extraordinary and complex and dynamic and brilliant. And this is Ken Wilber, obviously. And then this book is the one book, and he's reclusive. He's very, he's not out, he's not around. He's never gone on talk shows. He's always been very reclusive since he was in his his whole life. So. This is the one book that is really a glimpse into the most catalytic period in his life over the course of 5 years. And it's this epic love story. And I think when I read the book, I was working on a movie in Atlanta as an actor, and I put the book down, and something had hit me, and I didn't know what it was. I cried, but I was also uplifted, and I was full of hope. And it was an interesting feeling to feel sad, like in Titanic or The Notebook or Romeo and Juliet or Love Story or whatever, but there's this sense of eternal life and eternal love, and that was woven into it. In other words, there's this sense of selfless love, of transcendent love, that's written into the fabric of life, that was so well expressed in this book that I thought, man, this would make an amazing movie. And I didn't want to adapt it or direct it first. I was just blown away, and I couldn't, and then subsequently it developed into, well, okay, now I'm writing and producing and directing this. Now what?
Wow.
So it chose me, I think. But it chose me at the time where I was prepared to, bear the torch, carry the torch. Yeah, it's a big, and that's an interesting term, right? People will say, well, you bear your cross, or you bear whatever the thing is, right? The burden. And it only shows up at that moment, right? It only shows up at that moment that we're ready to have kids, or even have a pet, or have a home, or take on a certain job, or climb Mount Everest, or run a marathon, or whatever, fall in love, or get married, whatever the thing is, right? It shows up when we're almost ready, but not quite, right? It's like being president, of the United States, or of a company, or of another nation. No one's qualified. No one. And then you get in the job. You're only qualified once you've done it. If you're reaching high enough. If you're overqualified, you shouldn't be doing it, right? So I felt like I felt like I was the person to tell this story. That I knew Ken Wilber's work on a deep level, and that I was able to articulate the story in a way that I felt I was called to do it, that it was my duty, and that it was worth dying for, that it was much more important than me, that I could carry this torch. So I went into this party not party, but a think tank at Lynn and Norman Lear's house, who were wonderful. Norman Lear being, the prolific TV guy, and they've become friends, and I've been to many wonderful discussions at their home over the years. And I was there, I don't know, 6 years ago at something for something on the environment. And I started talking with this woman, and she teaches yoga, and her husband. And somehow Ken Wilber's name came up, and we were talking about books and consciousness. And then I said, did you read Grayson Grits? And she said, yeah, I read the book. It blew me away. And I said, I'm making it into a movie. And her reaction was, she went like this, and she went, how does it feel to carry that burden, like that torch? Like, that's a lot to carry. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And I in one way I was, but in another way, it was so beautiful what she said, because I felt like, all right, it's my turn. When you're a kid and you're going with a bunch of friends, and it's like your turn to jump off the boat or the diving board or into the pool or whatever the thing is. And then you're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden you get there and there's this, right, that I was arriving at that moment where it was like, all right, with anything new, where you have this excitement. It's not intimidation, but it's just excitement, and that excitement is so important to stay alive, to keep doing things that challenge us enough that we have to grow into greater aspects of ourselves. So sorry for the long answer on that one, but
no, man, this is amazing.
That
Passing the torch.
That movie called me, and it basically told me that I was going to tell the story. So,
and for all our listeners, go do yourself a favor, check out this teaser. It is incredible. The directing, the editing, the cutting, it's very artistically done. You really get all this emotion that's being spoken about. You can really feel it, and it's just, again, a very brief kind of sizzle, 2 minutes. It'll have you crying, laughing, and you really see how deep this story goes.
Do you see a parallel what's going on? It seemed from the trailer. I have not read the book yet, and I'm looking forward to doing so. But do you, from the trailer and what you and I have had discussions about, do you kind of see a parallel going on with the main character being confronted with this situation in life that she didn't ask for, but that they have to go down this journey? Do you see that story being so relevant to today, what's going on right now? And, maybe there's little snippets of wisdom, if you will, from the story that people can kind of understand and take away from this conversation. And maybe, there's this overwhelming fear right now going on. And I can't imagine what this main character was going through, and just being confronted with life and death. It was just this, but she's gonna go through it, and she's gonna do it. And there's no hiding. There's no going around it. It's just, she's got to go through this journey. And do you see there being some massive amount of correlation going on with what we're all dealing with right now? And what are your thoughts on that?
Steve?
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. One of those.
I think we can do that socially distanced.
Life touches us on the shoulder, right? At just that moment when we, think we've had enough, or we think we're comfortable, or whatever the thing is, and that's sort of I think written into the fabric of this labyrinth, and that maybe we intuitively reach for that, right before we come in, perhaps. Yeah, it's like you get really comfortable in the womb, and you're like, oh, it's good, it's warm, and it's nice in here, and then all of a sudden, like, stuff starts shaking, and the next thing you know, there's bright, and then and you're like breathing, and like people are touching you, and like it's scary, and like it's overwhelming, And I think that there's also, in the same way that we swallow or sign our name or we beat our own heart, that it's both voluntary and involuntary. And I feel like there's an intuitive connection with how we develop as individuals in terms of what we take on. And perhaps in the collective consciousness, we have taken this thing on out of necessity, right? There's 8 billion people in the world. It's just the world can't handle 8 billion people acting the way that, for the most part, we're acting, right? So it requires a stage of evolution, and every new stage of evolution is painful, and then always brings about enormous beauty and then enormous new challenges. And it's wonderful and romantic to be alive at this point in history and time, to be part of the going through, to have a say. We all have a say now. And it even dovetails back into what we started out talking about people being afraid of one another. Like, that's the worst. Like, come on, man, we can't go back. We can't go backwards. We went through that, whether it was race or color, or not race, but, whether it was ethnicity or color. It's like, we can't go backwards. We got to go forward. It's like, we really are in this together now, I mean, we've and it's crazy to see people, I think, when we're in times of crisis, and to relate this specifically to the question about, those 2 individuals in the film are faced with this challenge, and they have to overcome it, and they don't have a choice. They don't want to do it. It sounds horrible. Who wants to go through a challenge, right? and yet they have to do it. And it's like, well, that's where we're all at right now. And you see a lot of people are embracing it. You know, what you guys are doing, the kind of existential, content that you guys are putting out there to get people to have fun, but also think, and demand more of ourselves. And you see a lot of people are panicking. They're saying, I'm not ready. You know what I mean? Like, can't wait until it goes back to normal. I'm going to go Switzerland and I'm going to go snow skiing and like, okay, great. You'll get to do that, but there's something bigger going on here. It's not just about getting back to normal. So I love the question, and it's funny, as someone who's your friend and has great admiration and respect for the way that you conduct your life on all levels. It's like I remember, when you got married, it's like there's this sort of thing, and then you realize, oh my God, I'm ready. I'm the one. Like, I'm the one who's going to marry this woman and take care of her and love her for the rest of her life. And like, it's exciting and it's scary and it's beautiful and I'm doing it. I'm in, and it's like I think collectively have to get to that point in this pandemic. And I think that the act 3 in this movie is when they get to that point. At first they're madly in love, and then there's this challenge, right? And then they're like in denial about, well, let's just fix it. And then they realize, well, all right, you can't just fix it. Right. And then it kind of rips them apart. That causes a friction. But in that friction, they both grow and deepen and expand. And then they hit this point, well, you know what? Maybe we don't have to fix it. Maybe there's another way. Maybe there's a way to ride this thing forward and give everything we have without attachment to the result, without having to make it my way. Maybe we just make it the best way. Maybe I don't know what the best way is. Maybe we just collectively do it together and let's see what kind of cake we bake. And then it's always fun, if it's fun, it's going to taste good. It's going to be good. Right?
Yeah,
it's
man.
going to be deep. It's going to be transformative. So I do think that. And I think also the job of a storyteller in movies or a certain type of music and movies and poetry and books is to do that, is to write a new myth for the modern times. And I think that what I was trying to articulate with this movie is ultimately a myth for modern times, a new myth. What is selfless love? What is transcendent love? And why does it feel so good? And why do we want it so much, even if it hurts so bad?
Yeah. Gosh, we can't wait to check this out. I mean,
thank you.
It's beautiful, man.
We wish it was some kind of an early release, and for our listeners here, that we could give them some sort of a preview beyond what's already uploaded to the internet. Go check this out.
This kind of reminds me. It also parallels, I don't know if you guys have read the book, The Gates of Fire. It's the Battle of Thermopylae. It's that slim mountain pass in northern Greece where the famous, the movie 300 was based about. Where
this sounds like Ben Gordon.
Yeah, I'm big into drawing these parallels, man. It just kind of hit me, and it's like, this famous battle of these 300 Spartans, even though it was for them, it was a suicide mission, but they were going up against a very superior and numerically superior force of this Persian Empire, this huge, massive force against them. And they had to do this. They had to meet them at this pass. And it was the only advantage they had. And so they drew them in to this little pass, and there was only one way in and one way out. And I think right now what's going on and happening to people is that, in a way, how these Spartans had to face this force, people today are having to kind of confront themselves in this virus, in this pandemic head on. And there's, like I was stating before, there's no going around each other. There's no going, underneath this problem, and you have to face yourself. And I think a lot of people are having this problem right now where, the divorce rates are skyrocketing, and then the mental illness, the anxiety of what's going on. And I just think it's so exactly. And like, we have to face ourselves. And it's something that I got from this movie and what I know about, Grayson Grits. And I think that there's this huge parallel of confronting whatever it is that we need to confront right now head on. And we have to be scared of it. We have to feel these things. But on the other side, what is there? What more is there to this lesson that we're going to be learning? And I think, I just think it's such a beautiful story, man. I cannot wait to see this and experience this.
That's a wonderful analogy, because what was interesting is that initially when this thing happened, there were, agents or distribution, wonderful distribution companies I was discussing with, who initially were like, I don't know, this pandemic's going down. We just want to make people laugh and be distracted, right? That's what we want, and I was like, I don't think so. I don't think that's the temperature in the room,
Yeah.
And
it seems like a short-sighted.
Yeah, people want to laugh for a little bit.
Route.
Yeah, people really want to know. I mean, people don't go to, there are churches that are fun. There are synagogues that are fun. There are mosques. There are prayers. There are, beautiful rituals in all religions that are fun. People don't go every week or multiple times a week because it's fun. They go because they want to understand what's really going on, the difference between what's happening and what's really going on. And, that's what a great love song does. We all listen to Marvin Gaye, for example, and you hear those songs as a kid and you're like, the groove is good. And then you grow up as an adult and you get your heart broken, and then all of a sudden those songs mean something else. It comes on the radio and you're like, you're just crucified, right? I think that the interesting thing now is I've got different, all of a sudden out of nowhere. I mean, literally in the last week, I've had just some different agents and distributors reaching out saying, hey, we're really interested in this, people are looking at, because I think people want to address content in that way. You want to get in your car. I was driving the other day to go for a run outside, and I was listening. I have a range of different music, and sometimes something will hit you that's really soothing and upbeat. You're listening to that great Lionel Richie song.
Yeah,
Party, Kamala, Fiesta. Right, it's great. But then you also hear a little bit of the Tupac. That edge, that which says, look, take me, I don't care, kill me if you have to, right? And then you also want to hear that song that takes you to tears, whatever it is, whatever the song is, to be awake and in touch with all those things is the only way that we have firm footing. And when I say firm footing, I mean, if we're only touching part of our foot here, we're off balance. If we're in touch with our emotions that are both joy and sadness and tragedy and hope and exhilaration and meaning and depth and purpose, then all of a sudden we're firmly planted in this emotional life as a being, and I think that's the role of what music and movies and books do for us as human beings.
Yeah, and in that regard, laughter is just for the moment. What you've done with this film, all the emotions coming to the table, it's so much more deeply captivating for such a longer period of time. And I think, and I know a lot of people out there today, a lot of our listeners are going to really enjoy something like this, something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, man. Did you, do you guys like Terrence Malick? Like in his films, he did the Thin Red Line or Tree of Life or...
Oh, Tree of Life.
Tree of Life.
Yeah. And it's in that feel for sure.
Just soul touching. It's crazy. The only constant going on right now is this change that you're talking about, right? It's like there is no other constant. We don't, 2020 started off in a whirlwind, if you will. If you consume things like the news, right, you're going to have a perspective of this. The constant is all of these negative things. You don't hardly see the good things on the news, but Kobe Bryant dying, World War III apparently happening with, Iran. And then you've got it's just slew of, but then, if you don't watch the news, your perspective is much different. What have you seen lately going on with this pandemic, from in terms of perspective? What are some beautiful moments that you've seen that just, you were like, wow, this needs to be told?
What's interesting, and it's an abstract answer, but it's sort of this collective drive to find out truth, right? And, truth is always changing, right? It's always forming. Even science doesn't deal in truth. It only barters in epochs. It only barters in what's true for the times. We look back, and there was a time in science when the atom was the smallest measurable unit. That is no longer true. If any of our parents were in, college, if they would have written that on a paper, it would have been true. There was this sort of, I think my father, was at Berkeley at a point, and I think one of his, oh my God, I'm blanking on the professor's name, the psychology professor, and he said the final exam was say something, make a statement. If it's true and interesting, you'll get an A. If it's either true and interesting, you'll just pass. You'll get a C. If it's neither true nor interesting, you'll fail. So that was it, right? And I think he had said, or his friend had said, the atom is the smallest measurable unit that exists. So you got an A. That's now an F, right? Or a C. Interesting but not true, And so that's
interesting but not true.
Right? That's truth, right? And so I think in terms of looking at what's going on to see, at some point people have got to figure out that the news is entertainment. What's amazing is that we all care for someone who takes the news seriously. And there are amazing news outlets out there that will give more truth and less entertainment. And most of the news outlets are all entertainment, this much truth, liberal and conservative, right? I mean, these are businesses, and they are businesses. And the irony is that a lot of these conservative or liberal news networks are run by people who are not in line with their thoughts. They don't care. They just want to make money, some of them. Not all of them, but some of them. And there are amazing reporters working at those places, amazing human beings at every single one of them. But for the most part, right, the mainstream news is just entertainment. It is not, there's this great, I guess it was like, you think of like, when was the last time that the news felt the obligation to inform? And there have been some books written about that, but when is that? Like Dan Rather, maybe even going back before him. I mean, we're going back pretty far, to when before us or when we were little kids, right? The news had an obligation to inform people. Now, and I think that this Roger Ailes made a statement. He was the founder of Fox News, where he said, our job as a news network is not to inform people. People don't want to be informed. People want to feel informed. Right. That's a huge statement about what the job is, of the news. People want to feel. In other words, you want to turn it on. You want to go, my thoughts right. This guy's horrible, or this woman's bad, or this woman's horrible, or this is what. And people just buy into it. They invite into their home via the television or the phone or via the thing who they're comfortable with. We can't do that anymore in a world of 8 billion people. We have to invite in people we're not comfortable with, people we admire and respect, but maybe we don't understand them at all. It's important to have those discussions with those people. That being said, what is interesting is to see people looking for those things. There are amazing outlets, tiny little news outlets all over the world, that are reporting stuff that is a little less entertainment and a little more news. There are amazing documentaries about government, Dirty Wars is an amazing documentary by Jeremy Scahill. I learned an enormous amount from that. Even talking back, segueing back into where we started, JFK, that movie blew me away, from not a person who's a news person, but a person who's just a storyteller. But it just made me think about, well, we have to be free thinkers, we can't make these assumptions on the conservative or liberal side. We have to really be free thinkers and think this is a complex puzzle on so many levels. And if corruption comes when instability, opportunity and instability meet complicity and confluence, there's a lot of things going on here that are very, obviously this virus is real. We want to attack that on a biological level, but now people are finally coming to see that that's only one aspect of it. And it's the smallest aspect of it, right? The repercussions on all these other levels are so much more profound, And when you said earlier, you look at the divorce rates going up. Around the world, people are packed into a house that already is under a strained relationship. Let's say you've got one child with a disability of some sort, and there's a financial pressure in the house, and maybe there's a pressure in the relationship between the two heads of household, right? And then now they're told they can't go hiking, right? And then now one of the person's laid off, and then now you're saying, okay, well, the only thing that's open is weed stores, alcohol, and pizza. And sugar.
They did it right. That's all we need.
Let's get all our food from 7-Eleven, and so you look at that's a recipe for disaster. And then you look high up the food chain, you look at people who are mandating things across the board, it's overwhelming for them too. So we have to take that into it's our responsibility as individuals to say, okay, I'm going to spend time in the sun, and be this. I'm going to take, multivitamins or eat spinach or whatever the thing is. Whatever the thing is, I'm going to hug someone who's close to me who if I live alone or whatever the thing is, I'm going to, we have to make those decisions out of care for everyone, but also out of care for ourselves. Because either way, stepping forward in a world of 8 billion people, there's going to be death, and there's going to be pain, there's going to be challenges. We got to reorient. What are those challenges? And let's accept some of those challenges and go forward in a way to still make it as joyful and as wonderful, as possible. So that being said, to put a button on that is what's beautiful is to see people wanting to seek out this truth, even though most people right now, people regress in times of crisis. And, a lot of people are regressing, and they're becoming, the polarity is really splitting. People are becoming more extreme. But the good news is what happens next is eventually people are going to be like, all right, I can't live this extreme for too long. I just can't cope. Eventually, childbearing is tough. A woman is like in all this insane pain. There's good news coming, but it's going to hurt for a little while. There's no. The good news is there's a resurrection happening. But right now we're in the crucifixion, and so instead of like trying to fight it off and fix it real fast, let's get in the groove with that crucifixion. Let's say, all right, this is going to hurt, and let's allow some of that pain in, as opposed to being righteous. And I think that the challenge is that you've got two, kind of extreme, extreme defense mechanisms that kick in evolutionarily, and people are responding to those evolutionary responses. And we have to stop doing that. We have to go out of our way to do the exact opposite. To wave at people, to do kind things for people we don't know. That used to be something that was saintly. Now it's a requisite for living in the world today.
Good.
It's so amazing. It's we know we're running a little bit over. Man, this has just been, I want to pick your brain about every darn thing we've just talked about further. But man, kind of on that last note for this episode, we always like to, here at Call to Action Podcast, leave our listeners a way to take away something from our guests and you with meditation background. We didn't get into that this round, but you have 20 plus years of meditation studies, teaching, all of these. You've engulfed yourself into psychology of the human soul on top of everything else you do. What are some, a few key takeaways for our listeners who are the entrepreneur whose dreams are potentially being crushed right now because the momentum is just stopped, right? Or you've got that struggling actor, actress, desiring to get into what you've accomplished and are continually accomplishing, or simply someone just struggling to find inner peace. What would you tell them right now in 2020, April 23rd? What would you want to tell them right now?
For me, is everything has been about focus. As you're describing it, it sounds like I do a lot of different things, but they're all very closely aligned. Everything relates to consciousness, right? And it's in the world of film, psychology, meditation, but it's all closely interlinked. It's all storytelling in one way or another. Mm-hmm. So I don't do anything outside of that. I mean, I do some, but I stay pretty focused. I don't let myself get distracted. Even as you and I have done we've had so many wonderful days exercising and pushing it to the limit, and all the things that we've done, it's always really about consciousness. It's about saying, how do we push the thing past what's the breaking point? How do we get lost enough to have fun finding that breaking point and then have fun when we get past it? Then we've done it. We don't count the reps, the sets, the whatever the thing is, the hills, the whatever the thing is. And I think now more than ever, we've got to really be, and if anything, this pandemic offers an opportunity to refocus. Because if somebody goes home and they've got a number of hours and they're like, if they're just distracted, which most people are, because that's where the mind wants to go, the ego speaks first and loudest. Oh, that's cute. That's attractive. That looks tasty. That's why you go online. You're like, why are all these people posting photos of food? Like I have my own food. I don't need to look at someone else's food because that's where people feel good, But instead of getting those little hits of feeling good, saying, okay, does this align with what am I really doing in my life? And, instead picking up the phone and FaceTiming with someone who we maybe aren't as comfortable with to connect with someone different, new, picking up a book and making a commitment, saying, I'm not going to look at the computer or the phone or the news or whatever until I'm done with this thing. So I know for me, the only thing that I don't feel that I'm qualified to give any kind of advice, but I do know that if I didn't have a sense of focus, that I would be totally lost, because I love to consume the world. I love everything. If you told me tomorrow, let's go climb Mount Everest, I'd be like, let's do it. You'd be like, it's going to take a year to train. I'd be like, gosh, well, let's fit it in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then you'd be like, well, you can also swim from, the Molokai Channel. I'd be like, let's do it. And you'd be like, well, that's going to upgrade, I want to do it all. But at some point I say, well, all right, maybe I'm not going to be able to swim the channel, but I'm going to do Everest, or whatever the thing is, right? I think
Point doom.
I think that,
we'll start there.
We're doing it. It's happening.
Yeah, we are.
I think it's, death is 1 second around the corner, rebirth.
Yeah.
Whatever, that sweet goodbye is 1 second away, so why screw around? Why not really say, all right, what's the thing that I want to wear here? How do I want to engage in this?
Amen to that, my man.
That is solid.
Where can our listeners find you on social media, your website, or look forward to seeing you in anything in the near future? Let's plug Sebastian Siegel right now, hardcore.
I don't use a lot of social media, but I'll use Instagram. I don't post too often, but it's Sebastian Siegel, SIEGEL1, and then Twitter is just Sebastian Siegel, and the website for the film GraysonGrit.net, and then my own website. It's it's just a basic, but it's got a million links of all the things I've done, from books to rap music videos to trailers and free dives.
I saw you on Lil Wayne's music video not too long ago. That was badass, man. Playing into that 007 kind of feel. I loved it, man. What, for our listeners, which song was that?
Video for Tap Out with Wayne and Nicki Minaj.
Kind of a big deal.
It's a cool one. That was cool, man. He's cool. Yeah, he's great. Wayne's great.
The man, the myth, the legend, brother, thank you so much for coming on this episode of Call to Action Podcast. Can't wait to get you back on here maybe in the next month or so and just recap, and maybe we can dive into something else. But thank you so much for your time, bro.
I love what you guys are doing. Thanks so much for having me.
And if you want to show support, smash that subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a thumbs up, thumbs down, comment, let us know how we're doing. We want honest feedback from you, C-Tappers. And if you're feeling extra positive, head over to whatever audio platform you're listening on. Leave a 5-star review if you feel like we've earned it. It would mean the world to us and would be a great deal of support. And one last note, we do have a Call to Action Podcast app on the iOS store. Head over, download it. We're showcasing a new bit of technology we've been playing with, and get all the notification and updates for all the cool new episodes we've got coming your way. And I'm your host, Ben, with Call to Action Podcast Command Q.